Canada's track record on military procurement is nothing to brag about, often plagued by delays, cost overruns, and failures to deliver. But yesterday, the government did announce the creation of a new agency to expedite the acquisition of military equipment for Canadian forces. It is called the Defence Investment Agency, and it will be overseen by Stephen Fuhr, who is the Secretary of State for Military Procurement.
We need to parlay our excellence outside our own border. We don't do that very well. So, where we can partner, these are like if you go and spend billions of dollars on submarines with another country, that's a relationship you're going to have for a long time. Can we work that relationship in other ways that benefit Canada economically and the partner that we're working with?
Well, for an assessment of this new agency, we're now joined by retired Lieutenant General Andrew Leslie, a former Liberal MP. From 2006 to 2010, General Leslie was Chief of Land Staff for Canadian Forces. General, thank you for the time. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Listen, it's no secret that when it comes to military procurement, Canada does not have a great reputation. And, before we talk about this new agency, perhaps we can start there. Can you, explain to Canadians out there why defense procurement has been such a challenge for this country?
I think when the chips were down during the Afghan war, Canada showed that our defense procurement system could work quickly, efficiently, and deliver the goods to where the troops needed it most. However, in the absence of that forcing function, quite frankly, I believe a lot of Canadians thought that the Americans or somebody else would be there to protect us. So the politicians for the last 15 years haven't really cared that much. Neither has the supporting bureaucracy. And to be fair, neither have the people of Canada.
So now that changes because there is, as we know, much more talk and emphasis on arming up and making sure that Canada meets its NATO targets. And in comes this new agency, the Defence Investment Agency. The government says it will overhaul and streamline the process. Do you think this entity can actually do that?
Oh, my goodness, I hope so. And by the way, I and many others have been advocating for just such an agency because it's currently spread amongst disparate organizations with different priorities, different ambitions. And now you've got essentially one organization to bring them in. And let's not miss the fact that this is Prime Minister Carney's personal creation. So it reports directly to the top.
And did that give you more faith that it can do better than what has existed before?
Well, it certainly can't do any worse, and they won't. I'm absolutely confident that there will be some dramatic improvement because there's a fairly solid argument to be made that for the last 15 years, Canada's defense procurement system was probably the worst in NATO.
Now, it's also up against, the creation of this agency is up against a few realities. And ahead of the Halifax International Security Forum in November, we do know, for example, that Russia is arming quickly, that China is developing weapons quickly as well. How do you see this agency being able to meet that challenge, or at least theoretically be able to meet that challenge when Canada is playing catch up and these two big powers have already amassed great armaments?
Well, there's no doubt that we're far behind, but we appear to have the political enthusiasm. The polls show that more and more Canadians of all walks of life are much more interested in spending money on their security and their defense than ever before, at least much more so than over the last 15 to 20 years. The bureaucracy is not yet paying full attention, and that's going to be one of the biggest challenges that the team is going to face. But look, they brought in a business leader from outside, and that's a good thing, because the last thing you want is an expert in the current process, because the current process hasn't delivered. And you've got Steve Fuhr leading it, who's a fighter pilot, who chaired the Defense Committee for 4 years as a parliamentarian. He's got a lot of common sense, so I'm optimistic.
General, while you're here, and as we talk about procurement, of course, as a result of Donald Trump's 51st state comments earlier this year, talking about the possible annexation of Canada, at the end of last year, it has many Canadians talking more and more, including the government, talking about finding other partners from whom we can buy equipment, the Europeans, the Koreans, as an example. What do you make of that strategy? Are you concerned that that might politically backfire against Canada?
I think it is illogical to continue to have 75% of every dollar that we spend on defense going straight to the United States. And it's not because they won't remain as close friends and allies. and our largest trading partner, but we have to diversify. And as well, we can probably realize more jobs for Canadians if we spread our wings and fly a little bit further than we have in the past. Let's not always rely on one individual or one nation to provide us the sinews of defense, in other words, the equipment, or indeed come to rely too heavily on them to defend us. We got to do it ourselves in cooperation with others, and ergo NATO.
Is that a statement about Canada's need to be self-sufficient, or is that a statement about the changing relationship that Canada seems to be experiencing with the United States right now?
I would say it's, on balance, it's a bit of both. It's high time that we actually invested more in our defense because we've been promising to meet a variety of commitments for the last 15 to 20 years, which we have not done. Now it's a much more dangerous and complicated world than perhaps at any other time prior to the outbreak of war and during the Second World War. And our friends and allies want to help. They want us to be a strong shoulder, especially for the North. They want to balance some of the inequities that we see with the continual interaction with the Americans recently. This too may pass, but in the interim, we've got to make sure that we defend our nation because we can't rely on others to do it for us.
And when it comes to this agency, this newly created military investment agency, how will you judge its success or failure?
Well, unlike times gone by, it's not going to be hopefully process driven, where actually a bunch of people would gather and they're very, very pleased with themselves as a result of the process, nothing happened. I believe the Prime Minister is going to insist on results, and not only results 5 or 10 years in the future, but now, like right now, because it's a state of emergency. And I don't want to overstate the complexity of the issue and the urgency involved, but there's dangerous predators on the loose, and we have to do our fair share because who knows who's next.
General Andrew Leslie, as I say, always appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Thank you.